You're a big motorcycle enthusiast. You just picked up another.
Been for years. Actually, I always love it when somebody will say, "Is this your first race or whatnot?" I was actually the very first race. And it was an exhibition race, about 1967 or 8.
He was the breakout star of Storage Wars, the eccentric collector with the wild sense of humor, the flashy cars, and the fearless attitude. Fans adored him. Then suddenly, Barry Weiss vanished from the show without warning. Rumors swirled. Health issues, financial problems, or simply boredom? What really happened to Barry Weiss, and where is he now? When Storage Wars first hit television screens in 2010, audiences were immediately hooked. It wasn't just about abandoned storage lockers, it was about the characters, the rivalries, the risks, and the treasures hidden inside. Among the cast, one figure stood out instantly: Barry Weiss. Unlike the other buyers who treated lockers as business opportunities, Barry approached the game with pure fun. He wasn't hustling for profit, he was chasing curiosity. Whether it was arriving in a different classic car each episode, wearing outrageous outfits, or cracking sarcastic jokes, Barry quickly became the fan favorite. But after just 4 seasons, he disappeared. No tearful farewell, no drawn-out explanation, just gone. For years, fans have asked, why did Barry Weiss really leave Storage Wars? What was happening behind the scenes? And what's become of him since his exit? To answer that, we need to go back to the beginning of his story. From the moment Barry Weiss appeared on Storage Wars, he was different. The other cast members, Dave Hester, Daryl Sheets, Jared Schultz, and Brandy Passante, were hardcore buyers, hungry for profit. They measured success in dollars and cents. But Barry? Barry was in it for the thrill, the story, the oddities no one else cared about. With his spiky white hair, black leather jackets, and vintage sunglasses, Barry looked less like a storage buyer and more like a rock star. He rolled up to auctions in a parade of exotic cars, a 1950 Ford Custom, a vintage Jaguar, even a cowboy Cadillac. Every episode, his entrances became events in themselves. Fans quickly realized Barry wasn't desperate for a payday. Unlike many of his castmates, Barry had made his fortune long before Storage Wars. For decades, he and his brother ran a successful produce business in California, supplying fruits and vegetables across the country. By the time cameras found him, Barry was already a millionaire. The show wasn't a livelihood, it was a playground. But this mystery man persona was both a blessing and a curse. While fans adored his eccentricity, producers often struggled with him. Barry wasn't interested in manufactured drama or bidding wars. If a unit didn't excite him, he'd bow out without a second thought. This unpredictability made him fascinating on screen, but it also caused tension behind the scenes. And as the seasons wore on, Barry began to feel the weight of being television's most reluctant reality star. But what pushed him to walk away completely? Barry Weiss never set out to become famous. Before Storage Wars, he lived comfortably, collecting antiques, cars, and memorabilia purely for fun. But once the show exploded in popularity, Barry became an overnight celebrity. Suddenly, the quiet collector was being recognized everywhere he went. At first, Barry leaned into it. He joked with fans, played up his quirky persona, and enjoyed the absurdity of becoming a reality TV icon in his late 60s. But fame came with strings attached. Paparazzi followed him. Producers pushed for bigger stunts, and the public began to conflate Barry Weiss the character with Barry Weiss the man. Behind the scenes, Barry admitted the show felt more like work than play. Storage locker auctions, once thrilling, became repetitive. The pressure to deliver one-liners and wild reactions wore him down. Unlike his castmates, Barry didn't need the income. For him, the joy was in the chase, not the cameras. By the end of Season 4, Barry had a choice: keep playing the eccentric role that fans loved, or step away before it consumed him. He chose the latter. His exit wasn't dramatic, but it left fans stunned. Without Barry, the show lost much of its humor and unpredictability. But walking away from fame is never simple. Barry thought leaving Storage Wars would give him peace, but instead, it marked the beginning of a turbulent chapter, filled with both reinvention and tragedy. When Barry Weiss walked away from Storage Wars, fans assumed he would simply fade into a quiet retirement. But that wasn't Barry's style. Instead, he dabbled in new ventures, both on and off screen, proving he was more than just the eccentric uncle of the storage locker world. Not long after his exit, Barry returned with his own spin-off, Buried Treasure. The show followed him as he traveled across the country hunting for rare antiques, bizarre collectibles, and eccentric adventures. It was less about storage lockers and more about Barry's curiosity for the unusual. True to form, Barry drove a different car in nearly every episode, bringing back the flashy entrances fans loved. Though the spin-off only lasted a single season, it showed fans another side of Barry: his love of travel, his humor without the competitive tension, and his natural charisma. He wasn't playing the Storage Wars clown. He was simply Barry, doing what he loved. Later, Barry appeared in another short-lived series, Storage Wars: Barry Strikes Back, where he and his friend Kenny reviewed highlights from the original show with added commentary and humor. Again, it was a hit with die-hard fans, but never reached the same popularity as the original. Off-screen, Barry indulged his passions. He attended car shows, added to his collection of motorcycles and classic rides, and leaned into his reputation as the Collector King. Unlike many of his castmates, Barry didn't need the money or the fame. He lived life on his own terms, but just when it seemed like Barry had gracefully transitioned into semi-retirement, tragedy struck. A single moment on the road would change the course of his life forever. In 2019, Barry Weiss's life took a terrifying turn. While riding his motorcycle in Los Feliz, California, Barry was involved in a serious accident. He and a friend were struck by a car backing out of a parking space, and the impact was devastating. Barry suffered multiple injuries, including broken bones and significant trauma to his chest and leg. He was rushed to the hospital, where he underwent several surgeries. For weeks, his condition was uncertain. Fans who had grown to see Barry as invincible, the fearless man who joked his way through gator skulls, skeletons, and bizarre antiques, were shocked by the news. The accident left Barry with a long, painful recovery. Months of rehabilitation followed, and for a time, his future in the public eye was uncertain. Would he ever return to television? Could he even resume his active lifestyle, filled with motorcycles, cars, and adventure? Barry himself remained surprisingly upbeat through it all. Friends reported that he joked with nurses and kept his trademark wit alive, even as he endured surgeries and physical therapy. But behind the humor, the crash was a wake-up call. Life had changed, and so had Barry. The accident not only sidelined him physically, but it also forced him into a quieter, more reflective phase of life. Barry wasn't the type to wallow, but it became clear that his days of wild adventures and cross-country hunts might be behind him. Yet fans still wondered, would Barry Weiss make a comeback? Or was this truly the end of the Collector King's public life? After the crash, Barry Weiss disappeared from the spotlight in a way that worried and intrigued fans alike. For years, he had been one of the most recognizable figures from Storage Wars, always smiling, always joking, always driving something outrageous. But suddenly, he seemed to vanish. Part of this was by necessity. His injuries demanded a long, quiet recovery away from cameras. Bones and muscles don't heal overnight, and for a man in his late 60s at the time, every surgery, every round of physical therapy carried its own risks. Fans who were used to Barry's larger-than-life antics suddenly faced silence. But part of Barry's retreat was also by choice. Fame, as he had often admitted, was never his ultimate goal. Storage Wars had been a detour, an exciting, unpredictable adventure, but not the foundation of his life. After the accident, he seemed to embrace a quieter existence, one centered not on locker auctions or television crews, but on personal passions. Barry spent more time with close friends and family, particularly his godson, Jesse James. Yes, the motorcycle customizer made famous in his own right. He also continued to indulge in his lifelong love of classic cars and motorcycles, though now at a slower pace. Instead of racing down highways, he appeared at car events, admired new builds, and shared his expertise with younger collectors. Occasional sightings at car shows reassured fans that Barry was still out there, still living life in his own eccentric way. But the man who once thrived on making grand entrances had settled into something quieter, almost reclusive. And that shift left people wondering, was Barry Weiss happy in retirement, or was he quietly struggling with the loss of the spotlight? One of the biggest questions fans have always asked is, how did Barry Weiss make his money? Unlike many of his Storage Wars co-stars, Barry never seemed worried about profit margins. While others calculated what a locker might fetch at auction, Barry shrugged, laughed, and tossed out bids for the sheer fun of it. The truth is, Barry was already wealthy before Storage Wars ever existed. For decades, he and his brother ran a successful produce import-export business in California. Supplying fruits and vegetables might not sound glamorous, but it was big business. And Barry and his family thrived in it. By the time he sold his share of the business and retired, Barry was comfortably a multimillionaire. This wealth explains much about his persona on the show. While Dave Hester fought bitterly for every profitable unit, and Daryl Sheets obsessed over flipping valuables, Barry was the wild card. He didn't need the money. He just wanted the adventure. That's why he could walk away with a locker full of oddities and declare victory, even if the contents were worth next to nothing. For Barry, curiosity always outweighed commerce. After Storage Wars, Barry's wealth allowed him to continue his lavish lifestyle. He maintained a stunning collection of cars and motorcycles, some worth hundreds of thousands of dollars each. Fans have spotted everything from a 1940-something Lincoln Zephyr to a 1939 Cadillac Series 75 in his garage. His vehicles weren't just toys, they were expressions of his eccentric personality, rolling works of art that reflected his taste for the unique. But even with all that wealth, Barry's lifestyle wasn't reckless. Unlike some reality stars who blew their fortunes, Barry remained grounded. He lived well, yes, but he lived within his means. His investments in real estate and his business background ensured that money would never be a concern. Still, fans wondered, with financial security, fame, and a lifetime of adventure behind him, what drove Barry Weiss after his accident? Was he content to fade into memory, or did he still dream of one last chapter? When people talk about Storage Wars, one name always comes up first: Barry Weiss. Even though he only appeared for the first 4 seasons as a main buyer, his presence shaped the very identity of the show. Barry wasn't just a cast member. He was the wild card who gave Storage Wars its charm. Without him, the show might have remained just another reality series about auctions. Barry elevated it. His witty one-liners, eccentric taste, and habit of turning even the most mundane locker into an adventure made him the standout star. What made Barry different was his philosophy. For Dave Hester, it was about domination. For Jared and Brandy, it was about building a business. For Daryl Sheets, it was about the big scores. But for Barry, it was always about the curiosity. What strange relics, bizarre collectibles, or hidden treasures might lie behind a metal door? That philosophy resonated with audiences. Viewers didn't see themselves in the cutthroat bidders obsessed with money. They saw themselves in Barry, someone who just wanted to experience the thrill of discovery, who could laugh when things didn't pan out and celebrate the weirdness when they did. Someone who just wanted to experience the thrill of discovery, who could laugh when things didn't pan out and celebrate the weirdness when they did. Even after his departure, Barry's shadow lingered. Fans constantly asked producers to bring him back, even for a cameo. And when Barry did occasionally reappear in reunion specials or commentary episodes, the excitement was palpable. His presence reminded everyone of the early magic of Storage Wars, a time when the show was fresh, unpredictable, and filled with quirky humor. Barry's legacy is more than just his eccentricity. He showed that reality TV didn't have to be all drama and conflict. It could also be joy, curiosity, and the thrill of adventure. In a way, Barry Weiss became the conscience of Storage Wars, the man who reminded viewers that life isn't only about profit, but about fun. And yet, that very refusal to play by the usual rules might also explain why he left. In the world of reality television, there are unspoken rules. Cast members are expected to play along with the storylines producers create. They're expected to deliver drama, escalate rivalries, and push themselves to the brink for ratings. Barry Weiss never fit that mold. From the very beginning, he refused to play the game. If producers wanted conflict, Barry made jokes. If they wanted cutthroat competition, Barry walked away from bids. If they wanted a predictable character, Barry gave them eccentric unpredictability. Fans loved him for it, but behind the scenes, it created tension. While the rest of the cast leaned into rivalries, Barry treated the whole experience as a lark. To him, it wasn't a business or a performance, it was just a fun adventure. That refusal to conform is ultimately what made Barry so beloved. He wasn't trying to be famous. He wasn't trying to win. He was simply being himself, and that authenticity shone through every episode. In a genre filled with manufactured drama, Barry Weiss was real. But reality TV isn't built for people who don't play by the rules. By the fourth season, the pressures of production, long hours, scripted expectations, and growing fame clashed with Barry's carefree attitude. Rather than bend to the machine, he chose to step away. And in doing so, Barry cemented his legacy. He left on his own terms, not because he was forced out, but because he refused to let the show dictate who he was. For fans, that made him even more legendary. But walking away didn't erase the affection audiences felt for him. If anything, his absence only made his myth bigger. The "what happened to Barry Weiss" question grew louder with every new season of Storage Wars. Fans weren't just curious about where he went. They longed for the spark he had brought to the show. So what does Barry Weiss's story teach us about fame, authenticity, and the price of playing the game? Barry Weiss's 2019 motorcycle crash wasn't just a physical setback. It was a turning point that reshaped his entire outlook on life. For a man who had built his reputation on energy, adventure, and a love of the unusual, suddenly being confined to a hospital bed was devastating. The surgeries were long and grueling. Barry endured operations to repair severe chest and leg injuries, and his recovery required months of physical therapy. For many fans, the updates trickled in slowly. He was alive, he was joking with nurses, but the road ahead would be tough. And here's where Barry's character truly shined. Instead of sinking into bitterness, he leaned into humor and resilience. Friends described how he'd crack jokes even while hooked up to monitors, and how he reassured those around him that he'd be back. Maybe not on a motorcycle, but in spirit. Yet, the accident forced Barry to slow down. The man who once thrived on living large and taking risks now had to think carefully about every step, every movement. He became more selective with public appearances, opting for quieter events like car shows or private gatherings with friends. Emotionally, too, the accident left its mark. Barry began to reflect more deeply on his life, his choices, and his legacy. He had always lived on his own terms, but now he recognized the fragility of time. While he never lost his eccentric spark, there was a newfound weight behind his words. Fans who saw him after the accident often noted that Barry seemed calmer, more thoughtful, still funny, but more grounded. The accident didn't take away Barry Weiss's spirit, but it transformed it. He wasn't just the collector king anymore. He was a survivor. And as he stepped into this new chapter, fans wanted to know, where exactly is Barry Weiss today? So, what really happened to Barry Weiss, and where is he now? Today, Barry lives a quieter life in California. He's no longer the center of reality television, and he isn't chasing the kind of fame that once followed him everywhere. Instead, he's chosen to enjoy the things that have always brought him joy: his cars, his collectibles, and the company of close friends and family. Barry still makes occasional appearances, often at classic car shows, where he remains a respected figure in the community. His vast car collection continues to draw attention, with fans eager to see which rare gem he'll showcase next. From custom motorcycles to pristine vintage rides, Barry's garage is as much a museum as it is a personal hobby. Financially, Barry is more than secure. The fortune he built in the produce business, combined with the residual fame of Storage Wars, allows him the freedom to live comfortably without ever having to work again. Unlike some reality TV alumni who struggle to stay relevant, Barry has nothing to prove. He can simply enjoy the life he built. But perhaps the most important part of Barry's now is the peace he seems to have found. After years of fame, accident recovery, and speculation, Barry is content. He doesn't crave the spotlight, but he also doesn't shy away from fans who approach him. In interviews, he's admitted he's grateful for the ride Storage Wars gave him, but he has no regrets about walking away. For viewers, Barry Weiss represents something rare in reality TV: authenticity. He came, he entertained, and he left on his own terms. And in doing so, he became a legend, not just for what he found in storage lockers, but for the way he lived his life. Barry Weiss's story isn't one of scandal or downfall, it's one of choice. He entered the world of Storage Wars already a wealthy man, already living a life full of adventure. He didn't need the show, but the show needed him. And when he felt it was time to move on, he did, without apology. The motorcycle crash could have ended his story in tragedy. Instead, it became a testament to his resilience, a reminder that even legends face setbacks, but true character shines in how they respond. Today, Barry may not be on television every week, but his spirit lives on. For fans, he'll always be the eccentric uncle of Storage Wars, the man who laughed when others fought, who chose curiosity over profit, and who reminded us that life isn't about how much you earn, but how much you enjoy the ride. So what do you think? Should Barry Weiss return for one last hurrah on Storage Wars, or has he already written the perfect ending to his story? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more untold stories of the stars you thought you knew. Because sometimes, the greatest treasure isn't in a storage locker. It's in the life well lived by the people brave enough to be themselves.